All right, Ariel, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone. You have joined us for Regaining School Muscle Memory, the Fundamentals of Behavior and Overview. CPC is a collaborative organization using evidence-based, culturally relevant practices to build the capacity for all stakeholders in the implementation of PBIS as a multi-tiered system following the national PBIS blueprints for professional development, implementation, and evaluation. My name is Sharice Washington. I'm a prevention and intervention specialist with Desert Mountain SELPA. And with me today is
Ariel Clark, also a prevention and intervention specialist with Desert Mountain SELPA.
Thanks for being with me today, Ariel.
No problem. I'm excited, Sharice.
We are CA HELP, California Association of Health and Education Linked Professions. We are comprised of 3 entities that support all children. Desert Mountain SELPA and Desert Mountain Charter SELPA serve as a resource on issues such as prevention and intervention, including PBIS, behavioral health, and special education. Desert Mountain Children's Center provides therapeutic and behavioral health services to children and youth. Welcome to Zoom, or rather, welcome back to Zoom, because this is where we are every day. We are recording the webinar, and it will be available on the CPC page. Everyone has been muted, and so you will stay muted until it's time to share. Use the chat box to stay engaged by asking and answering questions. You will be able to access the materials at the CPC webinar webpage. It's the same website where you registered for this webinar. We will be uploading some resources that we'll be referring to later. And we also have someone who will be putting those resources into the chat box so that you can have access to them during this hour. Like all PBIS trainings, we have expectations. For this particular webinar, the expectations are to be respectful, be safe, and be responsible. You can do that by staying muted, using kind facial expressions, and using and participating in the polls, chat box questions, and the breakout rooms. Our outcomes for today's webinar are to explore the possible impacts of the stay-at-home order and COVID-19 on students and families, to develop a basic understanding of behavioral concepts and environmental arrangement, and to identify ways to disseminate that information school-wide. So remember, the main idea is to invest in prevention first across all 3 continuums: social, emotional, academic, and behavioral, with all 3 being equally important. Interventions that we might typically consider tier 2 may be needed on the more universal level upon returning to school. So that's something to be thinking about. As you continue to put energy into teaching your kids and maintaining relationships right now, also be putting energy into strengthening your foundations and planning for various scenarios for when school restarts. So right now we're going to go into a little bit of information about the impact on student behavior as a result of COVID-19. So we're all used to school closing for holidays and breaks, but this right here, this is something else. Children rely on the consistency of school, the set expectations, the schedules, predictable rules, and consequences. This is where muscle memory comes in. The idea that if a behavior is repeated enough, our muscles will remember, even if our brain is distracted or if school is closed for an extended period of time. The consistency of school helps teach children how to behave, teaches them self-discipline, impulse control, and it also offers a sense of safety. Many children rely on resources provided by school, including food, social, and mental health services. And as a result, this isolation here that we're dealing with caused by having to stay at home may mean that some children are more likely to be victims of or witness abuse in that home setting. So Duke and Columbia University, they began a study pre-COVID-19, investigating the effects of work experiences on worker and family well-being in a large US city. When COVID-19 broke out, the researchers started gathering daily survey data to measure the impact of the pandemic. And what they found during that first month was a significant impact on parent mental health and child behavior. Additionally, Kaiser Family Foundation states that existing mental illness amongst adolescents may be exacerbated by the pandemic, leading to more signs of depression and anxiety in youth. So here we have a list of some of the signs of depression and anxiety in youth, just for you to be aware of. And what we know is it's okay to worry on occasion. We all experience feelings of sadness. These are all normal. But when these feelings are persistent, when they last more than 2 weeks, and they interfere with our regular daily activities and family and school life, it might be time to seek help. This pandemic is potentially causing new widespread trauma with its worldwide impact. As a result, how we address behavior becomes even more important because we don't want to inflict more trauma upon our students. So now we have our first opportunity for you to participate. You can answer via chat box. What behaviors do you think you will see when school starts back up?
I see separation and anxiety is one listed. Anxiety, definitely. Hyperactivity. Yes. A lot of pent up energy. Definitely. Anxiety and crying. Task refusal. Not being used to having to do that work is definitely going to increase that. Eloping and a lack of focus. I see bullying on here. We had a previous webinar from some of our team members, Angie and Craig. So if you get a chance, check that back out too. Give great information on that, excitement and stress, okay? Desire to socialize. That's gonna be a hard one.
I'm gonna struggle with that one.
Absolutely. Yes, more trauma caused from having to keep social distance.
Mm-hmm.
Failure to follow social skills, staying on task. Absolutely, we're gonna see a lot of these different behaviors. Fight or flight. I think I see Marisol saying they're gonna want to do minimum work. They're not used to it, so that's gonna be definitely a change. We're gonna have to get them back in that mind frame of building that muscle memory to do that work again. Anger and frustration, lack of motivation. I thought I saw one that said, I totally agree with the desire to socialize, but how do you deny a hug or comfort an upset child? We're gonna have behaviors as a result too, right?
Right.
General confusion from kids, fear of being physically near other people, social distancing protocols. Yes, and I see a lot of you are agreeing with what's being said. Quicker fuse for teachers. We're going to give you some strategies on that today, so I'm glad you brought that point up.
All right, are we ready to?
Okay, thank you guys for engaging in that chat discussion.
So already a lot of thought has gone into, you know, what we might see, what types of behaviors will occur when we return back to school, and lots of questions as well. So will children be fearful of touching or standing too close? Will they struggle to reconnect or interact in groups? Will there be an impact on attendance? And I don't know, Ariel, did anybody put in there that we're going to see some expected behaviors as well?
I don't know that I caught it, but I'm sure it was full of discussion. So I'm sure that was.
Okay. All right, because it's not all doom. It's not going to just be everybody out of control. I mean, there are going to be some students who come back and they're going to follow the expectations as we want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
There may also be students impacted by having multiple virtual interactions during this time, because with all these little boxes on the screen, we have to emote more, and attempts to get attention and express emotion may be exaggerated. We might find that there's a loss of conversational nuances and empathy. There just really are so many things to be thinking about.
Okay, so with the questions and ambiguity that we all have as a result of the challenges from this pandemic, we can be certain about one thing. It is likely that you will see expected as well as unexpected behaviors when you return back to campus. Regaining school muscle memory will not only empower all staff to address and meet the needs of each student, but it will also allow the students an opportunity to get back to normal while adapting to what may be a new normal. Our aim is to do that, though, in a safe and structured environment. Understanding behavior concepts during this time and beyond the pandemic will help you and your students thrive. Click. So when we think about behavior and the fears associated with being in the immediate environment where behaviors take place, we should consider asking ourselves, is this a problem behavior or is it a pet peeve? Is it something that you find annoying, or is it an area that can lead to the following? Click. Does the problem behavior prevent your student from learning a new behavior? Does it prevent your student from showing previously learned skills like sitting on the carpet during circle time or remaining seated at the desk during a lesson? Does the behavior appear self-injurious, harmful to others, or property? Does the behavior disrupt the classroom or generalized environments like the cafeteria or the library or quad? Or does the behavior appear appropriate, like teams communicating with their peers, however, it's being done excessively? Now, if you find yourself answering yes to any of these questions, then finding a way to support your student in regaining or learning the desired behaviors that you would like to see them display will help them thrive in their new normal, but it's also going to benefit you as well. So let's look deeper into the concepts of behavior. So I don't know about you guys, but this stay-at-home order has definitely granted me time to dive into some of my favorite hobbies like gardening and landscaping my front lawn. In doing so, I've come across some pretty intensive culprits. I call them villains because they're messing up my plans. But many of you may know them as weeds found in your garden. Weeds are another living organism, and they display behaviors also. Garden weeds attach themselves to healthy plants and create barriers to progress that ultimately inhibit the plant's healthy growth. Our students are like healthy plants. They have problem behaviors that impede their growth and development. So just like the gardener who wants to stop the garden weed from having a negative effect on the healthy plant, you, staff, teacher, may find yourself wanting to stop the problem behavior from having a negative effect, that you guessed it, on your student. So what does a gardener do when they see the weed attaching itself to the plant? Well, they look for the root, right? The root of the behavior. Click. So the root is the function of the behavior. That determines the behavior that is being seen, although the function, like the root, is beneath the surface. Like the leaf, behaviors such as kicking, screaming, withdrawal, and not completing work are the behaviors that you see, which is the manifestation of the root. Now, the stem is the very thing that is maintaining the behaviors. As the stem continues to supply the leaves with what they need to grow, the reinforcement of the behavior is what will increase the likelihood of those very behaviors being repeated from your student. As the root strengthens the stem, you may see an increase in opportunities for leaves or more intensive behaviors to be displayed. So how do we find the root? Well, one way, go ahead and click that, Sharice, Thank you. One way to gather information on what the function of the behavior may be is through an ABC descriptive analysis. I'll have you note that most ABC charts do not look like this. They usually only have a selected section that say ABC, and then sometimes they'll have the section below where you see setting, events, and reinforcement. So look at this chart as a way to understand how to collect the data and how to use it to determine what the function of the behavior may be. ABC is an acronym. It stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. And remember, a consequence is literally what happens after, okay? Antecedents includes the setting events, which are the things that are taking place in the environment. So speaking of the plant, what's in the plant's environment? Well, the sun, the clouds, and water are a part of the plant's environment. These things can be seen, heard, smelled, or even let's take in consideration, maybe the person or people in the environment. Okay, now looking at B, it's the undesirable behavior of the problem. Okay, this is what's not seen. C, the consequence, which is what happens immediately following the behavior. And this includes the reinforcement, which is what is maintaining the behavior. The reinforcement is what is done in order to see the behavior reoccur over and over. It can only be determined by the student though, okay? So as staff, you may be able to give them reinforcement items, but it has to be something that the student finds motivating. So let's look below at our chart. You'll see on the left, right under the icon of the cloud and the sun, we're gonna talk about our student, Sam, okay? He's gonna be with us for this next 45 minutes. So Sam's section, Sam walks in after lunch and he's given a math worksheet. This is the antecedent. Sam refuses to do the work, which is his behavior. And so as a result, he is sent to the office. This is his consequence. Now let's look below. Maybe this is happening later in the day, midday, right? And Sam is distracted by another student. We'll call her Margie, okay? And as a result, he is off task. You can see that it states off task in the behavior section on the chart. So as a result, Sam teacher moves his seat next to her desk and Sam receives attention from the teacher. Now, this is the part. This may be reinforcing to Sam. Let's look a little bit lower. At the end of the day, Sam teacher gives him a difficult worksheet to complete, but instead of doing the sheet, Sam places his head on his desk and his teacher gives a phone call home, okay? As a result, Sam does not complete the assignment. From this data, we can take a guess at what the potential root of Sam's problem behavior is. And Sharice is gonna discuss that a little further as well. Click. So recall the function of the behavior is the root of the problem. There are 4 functions of behavior: sensory, escape or avoidance, attention, and tangible. These functions of behavior can be viewed as 2 separate categories. If you look to your right, the difference between escape and avoidance is, well, I'll give myself as an example. I may be attempting to not have to come in contact with a particular person or an activity, and so I'm going to avoid them altogether. Whereas if I'm going to escape something, that means I've already come in contact with that person or that activity, and now I want to get away from it. So maybe you handed a student a worksheet, but when they looked down and they saw that these problems were difficult or something they weren't familiar with, it caused them to panic. And so now they may act out as a way to escape from having to complete that task. On the left, where you see to get in the green box or square, a person may be trying to obtain access to something. So like access to attention from a teacher or peers, or even a preferred activity like time on the computer. If I'm trying to escape sensory, I might put my hands over my ears to block out the sound, okay? Even in this moment, or while you've been watching other webinars, you might find yourself needing to obtain some sensory input. So you might tap your feet on the floor, right? You might have a pen in your hand and you're clicking it on the table or what have you, or the side of your couch, right? You may reach back and start to play or twirl your hair. These are all opportunities for you to gain access to sensory input. The thing about sensory is that whether you're trying to avoid it or escape it, you actually don't need anyone else's help, okay? That's the one function of behavior that is independent of anyone else. So let's think about Sam. Maybe he was trying to gain access to his teacher's attention by causing a disruption or acting distracted, right? Maybe he learned in the past that when students interrupted the lesson, that they would engage more with the teacher, okay? So these are all things to consider. Now that we've learned a little bit about functions of behavior, let's do a quick poll, okay? So the poll should pop up for you. Okay, so the poll question, what function of behavior are you more likely to observe upon returning to campus? I'm gonna wait and allow some more participants to respond. Okay. Okay, looks like 68% of you believe that escape and avoidance will be a concern when students return back, and then attention. And we know that this may be due to the deficit in opportunities to either gain access to attention or even having to do the work there that they will be expected to do once they return back to campus, okay? So what does this mean for you? Well, we don't know. We're all in this space of ambiguity, right? And we'll be expecting daily changes. But what we do know is that when you strengthen your knowledge and behavior fundamentals by gaining strategies and resources to regain school muscle memory, this will help you to appropriately address any function of behavior that you see take place. Click. Okay. So now that we know how to determine what behaviors are a necessary need of support by asking ourselves guiding questions and utilizing an ABC descriptive analysis chart to arrive at a hypothesized potential function of the behavior, we can work towards appropriately removing the weed or the behavior, right? And we're going to remove it from that healthy plant, which we've learned now is our student. This is done by teaching replacement behaviors. Use a weed and feed approach, right? When you're working on your lawn or in your garden and you see a garden weed, you don't rush to pluck it, right? You want to pay attention to it and assess it and see which need needs to be met. Well, I heard a quote yesterday. It was mentioned during another CPC webinar. It was really great. And the quote was from Dr. Horner. And it read, "Don't correct something if you haven't taught it." Right? So we should really consider our expectations for the children that we are servicing, right? Select an appropriate behavior that serves the same function as the problem behavior. If behavior is being displayed in order for your student to obtain attention, well, then let's teach the student a socially acceptable way to obtain attention, like raising their hand to be called on. Teach replacement behaviors while attempting to eliminate or reduce a behavior. Provide reinforcers that previously maintained the problem behavior contingent upon the new alternative behavior. So if Sam was escaping from completing his math worksheet, teach Sam how to request for a break and then allow him an opportunity to have a short break from that assignment. Now I get it. This may be uncomfortable for some teachers, but think about this. If Sam stays in the classroom, then Sam have more opportunities to learn the very material that he may be trying to escape from or avoid. Click. There we go. So let's recap how to weed out the unhealthy plant. First, you want to determine the function of the behavior and remember to provide a replacement behavior. Be careful not to damage the healthy plant or our student while trying to remove the unhealthy weed, the problem behavior. Implementing a behavior plan that does not align with the appropriate function of the behavior may cause your student's behavior to increase. So use that weed and feed approach by remembering to use reinforcement. Provide replacement behaviors and reinforce appropriate behavior. Give those specific phrases. Our kiddos returning back to this new normal, they're going to need it. And encourage your coworkers to reinforce their behaviors by cheering them on and telling them, hey, keep it up. You're doing a great job as well. Treat your plant by implementing a plan for the behavior and not for the student. Remember, your student is not the behavior. Your student's a healthy plant being attacked by a garden weed. Click.
So how do we best support all students at all times? How do we feed our healthy plants while inhibiting the growth of weeds? Whether our students have experienced trauma, whether they are struggling with a mental illness, or whether they're a student who typically does what we expect them to do no matter what. We look at our antecedent strategies or our environmental arrangement. These are our weed and feed practices. These practices have a dual purpose. They inhibit weed growth, the behaviors, and they act as a fertilizer to feed our healthy plants. The classroom environment is one of the most important factors that can encourage appropriate behavior or problem behavior. We all know the factors that can threaten the positive classroom, and we're living in those now, such as a pandemic, shelter at home order, when and how schools open back up. Consider for a school of 2,000 students, you could have up to 2,000 distance learning environments that students are coming back from. We can't control many of these factors, but there are things we can control, and the classroom environment is one of them. Environmental arrangement refers to everything in the physical space, routines, schedules, practices, and activities that school staff can deliberately adjust in order to promote learning. Here is where we gain or regain our muscle memory. The classroom environment begins with the teacher. The feelings, thoughts, mindsets, and knowledge they bring into the environment affects everything within that environment. Remember, you have to be aware of your own pet peeves and annoyances. There will be feelings and thoughts associated with the return to school. There will be excitement or fear. There could be happiness or dread, or a combination of them all. So we have 2 questions for you all to take into the breakout room. First of which is, what is your understanding of behavioral concepts and environmental arrangement? And the second question is, what thoughts and feelings will you be bringing into the environment? Now, I know that breakout rooms can cause you to have some uncomfortable emotions. I know from experience. But please, do the best that you can to go ahead and go into that room and participate fully. That's going to be hard.
Would anyone else like to share what they discussed in their breakout room? Go ahead and enter it in the chat box. Okay, I see a discussion was having clear expectations and maintaining consistency. Maintaining consistency is going to be difficult with everything constantly changing, right? So we'll start the school year back up, and then there will potentially be another change. We are now more aware of how quickly those things can happen and how unexpected it can be. Looks like Annie says that they discuss feelings of patience and understanding with staff and students alike. Absolutely. Remembering that teachers will need as much help shifting their thinking towards behavior. Reteaching routines will be equally important. Okay. Okay, I'll read one more, Sharice.
Okay.
I
Okay.
see Sandra. I'm a okay. Preschool teacher just wants to be positive to deal with change in the student's behavior.
Okay. That sounds good. Thanks for sharing, everyone. Hopefully this webinar will give you some foundational pieces to build upon in terms of your understanding of behavioral concepts and environmental arrangement. As far as your feelings, we know that feelings, our emotions are normal. You know, the first step is to be aware and determine the thoughts and feelings that you're having, whether you can cope with those on your own or whether you need help from friends, colleagues, or mental health professional. Make sure that you are doing all the things you need to do to take care of yourself. Take a look at the CPC webinar list and check out some of the self-care webinars available there. We all know that adult reactions are key, and students will be looking at adults for cues on how to react. We also know that the most important aspect to a safe and positive learning environment, the greatest weed and feed, is the relationship between the teacher and the student. So think about it. You don't have to answer via the chat box, but once you get your mind right, you do all your mental and your emotional gymnastics, you get into your home office space. What do you need in that environment to maximize productivity? I know that for myself, I live with a lot of people. I have a large family, so my home office is also my bedroom. So I know for me, it's important to make my bed in the morning. It's important for me to pick up everything off of the floor. It's important for me to have a schedule to keep me on track. And I also have some rules about my office space during the day. I only eat in the kitchen. When I take a break, I go outside. I only use my phone for texting or phone calls. Otherwise, I'm kicking back on my bed and I'm scrolling through Instagram and the news, and bad things happen from there. So just like we have things that we need within our environment to be productive, our students need those same things as well. These are our weed and feed practices, our evidence-based practices that teachers can use within their classroom. So at the same time, you know, we also have to consider the possible impacts of school closure on the pandemic and how that may manifest itself behaviorally. Don't forget, students have missed out on the set expectations, the routines, the predictable rules and consequences. They will need to come back to a safe and structured environment that will support them as you all begin to heal and process the changes that have occurred as a result of this pandemic. So our first practice is physical design. How is your classroom set up? Does it support typical activities such as small groups, whole groups, centers, labs? And this is all going to vary depending upon the developmental level of your students and the subject being taught. But your furniture should be arranged so that adults and students can move freely. Instructional materials should be neat, and the materials posted on the wall should be related to the curriculum being taught. So think about Sam, our student from earlier. Given his difficulties, are there some changes that could be made in the physical design of the classroom that can meet his needs and prevent problem behaviors from occurring? Perhaps the addition of relevant math materials posted on the wall with clear instructions on how to utilize the materials could assist him with his work completion. Our second practice is creating classroom routines. Routines simplify situations, making transitions predictable and reduce stress for students and staff. Common routines include arrival and dismissal, transitions between activities, how to ask for help, what to do after work is completed, and how to handle conflicts. Consider creating routines for the most problematic times based on past data, or anticipated changes that are coming. Remember Sam? He was shutting down and refusing to complete a difficult task at the end of the day. Have your students been taught the steps to request assistance? If so, does Sam need additional instruction in that area? We can also look at what's happening during the transition to this activity, and perhaps adjust the schedule so that he's not expected to complete the most difficult task at the end of the day when he might be the most tired. Expectations. So with COVID-19, there may be a need to make some changes to our teaching matrix. For example, rules about hand washing, physical distancing, not sharing food and materials, the wearing of masks. How we socialize with each other is probably gonna look different. How we greet each other, will we be able to high five, dap? Maybe not. And more than ever, social emotional learning is gonna be crucial, and embedding those skills into the teaching matrix and the curriculum will be critical. This example matrix is from the PBIS brief, Teaching Social Emotional Competencies within the PBIS framework. It is important to teach these skills the same way we teach behavior. For this matrix, a school found that large social settings such as lunch can be stressful for students. So they created a quiet lunch as an option and taught their students how to have a lunch plan, invite others, and use coping skills as needed. They also applied the social emotional skills to the online setting. Let's go back. So for Sam, what might be a good strategy to use with him is to remind him to use his learned skills, such as asking for help and using coping skills prior to entering those difficult situations. So these weed and feed strategies, they're rarely used in isolation. For our student who is off task and his function is adult attention, the use of active supervision made easier if the design of our classroom allows for everyone to move freely, can decrease the likelihood of him engaging in off-task behavior. The addition of positive specific praise can be used when Sam is following along with the expectations. There will also be more opportunities to provide non-contingent attention on either a fixed or a regular schedule for Sam. The final evidence-based practice we're going to talk about today is multiple opportunities to respond. This is the teacher behavior that requests a student response. Opportunities should be varied and include individual and small group questioning, choral responding, and nonverbal responses. There is a positive impact on student learning at 3 opportunities to respond for each minute of instruction. Increased opportunities to respond lead to higher rates of on-task behavior and lower rates of disruption. Specific strategies to use here with Sam would be calling on him when the answer is posed, especially if we have a good idea that he knows the answer, and also inviting him to summarize the main points of a class discussion. This document includes an interactive map of classroom strategies, a self-assessment, examples and non-examples of all the strategies we talked about today. It includes some videos and some other resources that can help you in implementing these practices. Don't forget, tiers 2 and 3 build upon the preventative antecedent strategies and interventions. This is your foundation. If your foundation is weak, it may look like students need higher levels of intervention that really do. And what that's going to do is going to tax the resources on your campus. So now that we've considered the impact of school closure and the pandemic, and you've received some information about behavioral foundations, what's next? What do you want to do? What are we going to do with that? Ariel?
So it looks like we have just enough time to go over or do a review on disseminating knowledge. And so we know that the more knowledge you receive on helpful strategies and foundations will help you and your students thrive. Okay, next one. So how does this decision-making group who has received the information, and you may be included in that since you are a part of the webinar today, how do you share with your school staff? These are things to consider. since we're building capacity. Are your monthly meetings and quarterly trainings being conducted? Is there a system in place to follow up and check for fidelity? Now, I know that we're not on campus right now, but once we return, we have to consider these things. Are systems in place to ensure school staff's needs are being identified and addressed are key to building capacity. Do you have several gaps between training and implementation? Note that the one-day in-service leads to little change in teaching practices. Without substantial ongoing support, fidelity levels are likely to be low. Teachers who received more ongoing opportunities or more ongoing support have higher fidelity, higher student engagement, and achievement in their classroom. They also have fewer problems with behavior in their classroom. So, does your site support growth and development by providing opportunities for learning walks to watch practices being done? Okay. Are you receiving internal or external coaching to support the desirable culture and climate that your site is aiming to obtain? These are all questions to consider when building capacity by disseminating the information that you have learned. Click. What information should be available and presented to all staff? Consider including the following when disseminating tools to regain the muscle memory at your site. During today's overview, you received some information and resources that can be taken back to your site, such as behavior concepts and knowledge on how to collect data through an ABC data chart, how to use antecedent strategies such as evidence-based classroom practices to prevent behaviors from happening, along with guiding questions that can be used to action plan on implementing systems for students that may benefit from more intensive supports. Click. If you'd like further details on some of the information that was included in today's presentation, you can click on the links to several references that we have. We also have, go ahead, go to the next one, Sharice. Resources, please check them out. They're great resources with varied topics that may continue to prepare you for ways to respond to behavior following this pandemic. They're all listed on references. I'm sorry, all of our references can be listed or that are listed on the pbis.org website. I do want to mention that because this was just an overview, we're trying to condense this information for you, but you can receive detailed information with these resources. Click. In closing, many of you are already aware that the CPC has made decisions to forego the California PBIS recognition system for the 2019-2020 school year. In its place, the CPC will be providing a process to highlight the amazing work of schools during COVID-19. So, California PBIS Community Cares is a way of honoring the positive impact schools are playing in the lives of California students, families, and communities. So check out that website below for more information. Next, we truly appreciate you spending this last hour with us, and we welcome your thoughts. Sharice and I are asking that you visit the site, list it to give us feedback on our evaluations. We utilize this feedback as a way to improve our content and tailor it to match your needs. So please, please check that out. Next. So we're hoping that you enjoyed this presentation and you were able to gain some information from it and other presentations that have been done on the CPC site. There are a few more left for you. Some of our colleagues will be doing the universal screeners, early childhood, and many others that you can find on here, the same place that you were able to access the information for this presentation. Click. So thank you again for participating in today's webinar. We appreciate all that you are doing to support our children and our families. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank all of you.
Well, thank you.